Hi, everybody. Please let me know. Oh, wow. Thank you very much, everybody, for doing such a wonderful sharing job on this video. Thank you for all your help, and good evening, everybody. Good evening, Dolores. Good evening, Dale. And good evening, Kathy Langen, Sam Hollenbeck, Sam says I'm on. Yes, I guess I am on. Lana says, hi all, please invite and share. And Russ says, at the Stony Brook MMT conference, the FJG still had a lot of academic conceptual feel about it. The implementation side felt a bit hollow, as I didn't hear any real project management level thinking going on. Thanks for that comment there, Russ. And Lana Dell and Susan Eldridge and 6 other people joined. And Cora Manuel is here. Hi, Cora. Russ said also at the conference it was brought up that Omar has an FJG bill on the table for consideration. Wonderful. Most probably she'll do a very good job with the FJG bill. I haven't seen it yet, though. Has it been introduced into the Congress, Russ? Greg says, good evening, everyone. Your audio and visuals are coming in great. Thanks, Greg. That's terrific. Dale says, it looks great, and the sound is good. Thank you. I changed my lighting a little bit for tonight. I also seem to be a little frozen. Not sure why. Let's see what's going on with my usage. Yeah, it's a little high tonight. I don't know why. Okay. Okay, how's that, Russ? Is that better on the echo, on the audio? Andrew Blair, how are you tonight? Nice to see you. Susan asks, what do you think of Ilhan's FJG bill? Is it out yet? If it is, then someone please put the link down on there. Greg says, Elsa paid you a visit, but laugh out loud. Okay, and Russ said, I don't know, it sounded a bit like pilot testing FJG programs. A little. Yeah, pilot testing FJG programs is no good because you can't get the macroeconomic effects from a pilot test. That's the same problem with the pilot testing, of a UBI. They're not good from that standpoint. Okay, so let's go quickly through a bit of an overview of job guarantee. Susan says Pastor Delman Coates of Our Money is a big supporter of the FJG. Said it wasn't perfect, but it's a start. I think it might be the Hawkins bill. Were you talking? Are you talking about the Humphrey Hawkins bill? The Humphrey Hawkins bill was a bill that passed back in, I believe it was 1979. And it was supposed to provide aid for full employment, but it had no teeth. It was the bill that created the dual mandate for the Federal Reserve. Lana Dell said Sam Kangaroo. And Susan Eldridge said yes. Okay, so let me get into the Federal Job Guarantee Program. It's a proposal for providing federally financed. Well, if you'll excuse me, before I start on that, I'm going to refresh. Do I need to refresh my camera? No, I seem to be moving on the. Seem to be moving on XSplit. What I probably need to refresh is my Facebook page. Hang on just a sec, please. So there we go. I'm back, and I think my face is moving now. And Lanadell. Sam is trying to join here. That's why I tagged him. Yeah, he was on a little while ago, but I guess for some reason he dropped off. I'm not sure why. So there you go. Yeah, I know there's a JG that was actually introduced by Cory Booker, and that was a pilot program. But the Ilhan Omar JG, if she's introducing one, may be entirely different. Kathy Langan is back. Okay, so the JG is a proposal for a program that would be federally financed, where the jobs would be federally financed, but the program would be locally administered in local communities around the country. The jobs would be at a true living wage with good fringe benefits, ideally. But of course, people who are talking about it now are talking about a $15 an hour wage. And you, of course, can argue quite easily that a $15 an hour wage is not a living wage in many communities in the United States. Anyway, the conceptual proposal is for a job at a living wage with fringe benefits that are good, including with medical benefits that are extremely good, the equivalent of what's being talked about now with respect to Medicare for all. Amber Lee, hi. How are you doing? Okay, and also vacation leave and family leave and sick leave. And these jobs would be on offer to anyone who wants a job. So the program would provide then full employment, true full employment. Yeah, Susan says, I think she's talking about the Cory Booker program. It's a 3-year pilot program at the Department of Labor. Yeah, it's probably designed to kill the job guarantee by basically giving people a basis for saying, well, we tried that and it didn't work. I highly distrust that bill. And Dale Weaver says 30K won't cut it in northern New Jersey and New York City. It won't cut it in LA either. It won't cut it in San Francisco. And Dale Weaver says, regardless of age, I wonder. Well, the point is, it's supposed to give a living wage to someone who's a typical worker, and not to someone who's a young worker and is living at home. It might be adequate for that kind of situation. Okay, anyway, it's supposed to provide truthful employment on a permanent basis in any kind of an economy. And after an initial positive shock to the economy, it would provide a continuous brake on inflation because wages would adjust to the level of the job guarantee. And for the private sector to compete, it would have to pay more than the job guarantee. And so once everything else pays more than the job guarantee, then the job guarantee program itself serves as a brake on inflation from that point on. Okay? And the reason why it does is it provides a baseline wage. Okay, if you have a very tight employment situation, as you would in a true full employment economy, then it counters by those workers who would be bargaining for higher wages that might be out of line with productivity in the economy. And so it would give employers some power to say no to these workers because the theory is they could always hire off the job guarantee program. Uh, anyway, with respect to the job guarantee, the details differ among economists and people who are policy analysts. MMT economists tend to favor a larger living wage than others. They're less fearful of a possible inflationary impact of the program. Instead, we view, if I can include myself, even though I'm not an economist, I'm a political scientist, uh, instead, we view a job guarantee as an automatic stabilizer that after the initial shock of its introduction will maintain full employment and have a deflationary impact on wages. Potential benefits include lessening poverty, inequality, family breakups, reduction in crime rates, serious illnesses, and premature deaths and suicides, okay, and homicides. In other words, it promises to be a very, very good program. Some other benefits, which it seems to promise, is that it would keep the otherwise unemployed socially integrated in society due to the way it would work. Here are some common objections to the program. That one here is in loose talk. You cannot nationalize a quarter of the labor force without significant and also negative effects on productivity and also growth. Well, the first objection to that is nobody proposed nationalizing a quarter of the labor force. In a stable JG situation, there would probably be no more than perhaps 2.5 to 5 million people on the job guarantee program. It might start out at something like 16 million people, but once a true full employment situation was reached, and once the private sector had to hire off the JG program due to the stimulus in the economy at that particular point, uh, the JG would settle down to a relatively marginal program that would employ people who could not find a better paying program in the private sector. That's the thinking, anyway. In other words, the JG is supposed to be a transitional employment program. Its intention is not to displace the private sector. If we had 5 million people inside of the JG program, it would be roughly not but 25% of employment, but something like 2% of those employed, or 2.5%, okay, of those employed. Uh, in other words, the percentage of employed people in the JG program when the economy was doing well would be very low. Of course, it would be expanding and contracting with the business cycles in a countercyclic fashion. That's a mark of the JG program, that it would be countercyclic. Okay, so that's certainly something to keep in mind. So no one among us is claiming that we're going to be nationalizing a quarter of the workforce with the JG. That would amount to something like maybe 42 million people in the JG or something like that, and maybe even less. Uh, I'm sorry, okay, or maybe even more. It couldn't possibly amount to to 50 million people, okay, in the JG. It couldn't even amount to 40 million people, okay, in the JG. At the peak of things, it might amount to 25 million people, okay, in the JG. That's more like maybe 12% of the labor force or something like that. So it might vary between maybe 2% of the labor force, and maybe 12% of the labor force. Most of the time, in a full employment economy, it would be at somewhere between 2 and 5%, okay, of the labor force. So we're not really looking at so much. Anyway, another common objection is that there are lots of proposals about the JG, but none have worked enough on details. I actually think that the MMT economists have worked a lot on the details. Okay? And specifically, Pavlina Cherneva's paper, uh, uh, she wrote a paper at the Levy Institute in 2018, I recall, which dealt with the design of the JG. And I see I neglected to put a link to the paper in the description, so I will do so after the video, okay, is over. A lot of what I say here tonight is based on Pavlina's paper, which I consider quite an authoritative piece on the MMT version of the JG anyway, okay, at this point. Okay, so next, there are those who charge that the JG program is really a welfare check that sometimes has work requirements that, okay, are onerous about it. And therefore, it says the objection is it would be bad policy and it would be politically toxic. Uh, if the design of the program is implemented as outlined by Pavlina, no, it would not be merely a welfare check, but it would be a living wage. And the jobs would be good jobs with requirements for work that would not be onerous, that would be humane. And furthermore, the people who went into the JG program would have a lot of choice when it comes to the jobs that they could fit into. And we'll go into that, okay, a little later as we go through this some more. But uh, if the design works out, and you have to read the design to see how good it is, it would not be politically toxic. It would be great, and we'll go into some of the reasons for that as I continue to talk later on. The next common objection, it would be a high cost to government and a high cost to business. It will force many small businesses to shut down. Well, it all depends on what you mean by a high cost to government. Okay, there would be a lot less reliance on welfare programs. I shouldn't say welfare programs, but safety net programs, because people went into the JG. If they went into a JG at a living wage, then there would be far less need for safety net programs. So the JG would be replacing those programs, and hundreds of billions of dollars are spent on safety net programs now. Also, I want to be clear about something. When people get offered the JG, they get offered a choice, okay, of unemployment insurance, okay, or they can enroll in the JG program and find a job there. If they enroll in the JG program, then they don't get unemployment insurance. They get a living wage from the first day they go into the JG program. So it's not a particularly high cost to government. It might settle down at a permanent cost of roughly $250 billion a year. That's not an extremely high cost when compared to how high the federal budget is now, or how high the federal budget is going to be in the coming years. For example, it's only a fraction of the budget of the military and the security agencies. And the real security it would bring to people is considerable, as we will continue to see. Okay, as for businesses, there are many small businesses that would be stressed if they had to pay people a living wage. If those small businesses were socially useful in some way, then it would be possible for the government to subsidize them. In other words, this could be written into a JG bill as part of a transition that would be a just a transition. Okay. However, if a business is not in accordance with the public purpose and is also really exploiting a large buffer stock, okay, of unemployed people by failing to pay them a living wage, then such a business does not actually deserve to exist in the United States. And we should not be unhappy if businesses like that pass from the stage. As for the owners of those businesses, they can have a good transition if they enroll in the JG themselves. So they're getting a choice, which is to say they could enroll in the JG, okay, or they could pay their employees a living wage. How about that? Or they could look for subsidies from the government if they were doing something socially useful. Maybe they could even register for the JG program themselves, though that might be a little hard unless they were actually doing something that was good for the public purpose, important for the public purpose. So, the next objection to a job guarantee is that there's a lot of confusion about the goal of the job guarantee. Well, Pavlina is quite clear about the goals of the job guarantee program. Two primary goals are full employment as a social good in itself, and also its contribution to price stability, serving as an anchor against inflation. So, I think those goals, okay, are also pretty clear. Now, I think that there are some initial objectives as well for the job guarantee program, and when I describe it in more detail, I'll say what those are as Kamala Harris. I'm sorry, as but not Pavlina, not Kamala Harris, anybody but her. I was thinking of actually Pavlina Chernyeva. However, a friend of mine, Kamal Faour, an old friend of mine, has joined, and that's what triggered me to say Kamala. Okay, but it's Kamal here. Okay, so would the jobs be BS jobs in the job guarantee program? Not in an MMT based job guarantee program. When I say MMT based, I mean one that is based on a knowledge, okay, of MMT. So, no, there would be all jobs that were in line with the public purpose, where people were doing something meaningful for their local communities as judged by the stakeholders within the local communities, including themselves and other stakeholders in the job guarantee program. So they would not be BS jobs. How would they be generated? Well, we'll answer that question as we go along. And so, let's look at the context of an MMT based JG program. First, let's start with four categories. First category is the government sector. The second category is the domestic non-government sector, okay, of employment. So that sector includes the private sector, which is devoted to producing market-based value, something validated by the market through profit. There's that sector. And most people currently are employed in the private sector. But there are also a lot of people who are employed in the nonprofit sector. Then we also have another sector, which we can call the social enterprise sector, containing social entrepreneurial ventures, SEVs. Those ventures, the enterprises in that area, are by definition those that are aimed at producing social value for the public purpose, socially valued goods and services in line with the public purpose as defined by the local communities, okay, and as defined in very broad outline by the federal government, but in terms of detail by the local communities. In other words, they would be businesses that have outcomes that are in line with the perceptions of the public purpose that people have in the local communities. Businesses that have outcomes. And that should help the echo a bit, by the way. I made an adjustment that if there was still K and echo, it should be less now. So, okay, so nonprofits and social entrepreneurial ventures in the JG program will implement community-based and community-proposed types of programs that can be implemented at all phases of a business cycle, and that would address different levels of unemployment and community need. Hi, Rich. How are you? How would this be done? Through a bottom-up approach powered by the participants, by the local communities, okay, by localities that fit this aspect of fiscal policy to people, to communities, and their needs, their perceived needs that they want to have fulfilled. And this brings us also to another concept. Some of the SEVs and some of the nonprofits might be workers' cooperatives. So, what is a worker cooperative? It's a business that is owned and controlled by the people who work for it, who constitute the members of the cooperative. The two central characteristics of such cooperatives are: one, that workers own the business and they participate in its financial success on the basis of their labor contribution to the cooperative. Workers have representation on and vote for the board of directors in these organizations, adhering to the principle of one worker, one vote. So these organizations are small d democratic and have a considerable dimension of control and influence from the bottom up. Now, in some states in the United States, as Massachusetts and California, in the corporation law of those states, there's a specific code for workers' cooperatives. But in most states, that is not the case. So generally, it's the case that a worker cooperative can incorporate as a C Corp, an S Corp, okay, an LLC, a flexible purpose corp, or any other corporate form. as long as the company involved meets the minimum requirements of operating as a worker cooperative. So, again, to remind you, the workers have to own the business, have to participate in its financial success on the basis of their labor contribution to the cooperative, and they also have to be represented on and vote for the board of directors, adhering to the principle of one worker and one vote. So I thought it was important to define that so that you know what we mean when we say that the social entrepreneurial ventures coming out of the social enterprise sector of the labor market may, as the job guarantee goes forward, become more and more filled with workers' cooperatives. Obviously, the job guarantee environment is one that might be very friendly to workers' cooperatives. So, let's get into how an MMT-based job guarantee program would work. First, it would be a voluntary program. No one would be forced to go into the program. It would not be the case that in order to take advantage of other safety net programs, you would have to join the job guarantee program. No, the job guarantee program is independent. It's independent of safety net programs, okay, in general. It's a program that, okay, is added on. Now, if someone gets a job at a living wage and they tried to avail themselves of some of the safety net programs, they'd be excluded by the eligibility requirements of the safety net programs. But that choice would not be forced on them. They could continue on with the safety net programs and never get involved with the job guarantee program at all. So it's completely voluntary, and it's a tangible opportunity for those in forced idleness, those who can't find a job, to actively participate and contribute to the community. Now, this is very important. Okay, in other words, the idea of the basic income. Okay, so that addresses a particular kind of freedom, the freedom to exist. Okay, or if you want to say this, the right to exist, the right to continue to subsist. That's what a basic income is for. That's what a lot of the safety net programs are for. But the job guarantee program is about the freedom to work if you want to work. And we who believe in the job guarantee program say that freedom is every bit as important as the freedom to subsist. They're both important freedoms. And we want to see both freedoms fulfilled, both rights fulfilled. So, the JG will give people who want to work the resources they lack. Now, the program would follow a federally funded grants-based model. What's meant by that is that organizations registered in the program including local governments, including nonprofit organizations, including social enterprise ventures, including workers' cooperatives falling into one of those categories, would register for the program, and then they would propose various projects that they wanted to be part of those programs. And they would define jobs for these projects. The JG program would put out a request for a proposal, and these organizations would answer the request with proposed local level projects that people would be able to work on for their local areas. Now, these projects, once they're completed, while they're ongoing as well, would be evaluated for effectiveness and performance, against measures such as employment creation, environmental impact, public goods and services actually produced, community development, physical and human resource creation, renewal, and enhancement. The job guarantee would fund nonprofits and social enterprise ventures to design and implement projects for the public purpose. Now, when I say the JG would fund these organizations, I don't mean that the JG would pay for the jobs that these organizations define. No. The occupants of these jobs, the members of the JG program, the participants who take the jobs that would be created by the organizations involved, would be directly paid by the federal government. So the project organizations would not be directly paid so that they could turn around and pay the individuals. In other words, there would be no overhead costs on the individuals. In other words, there would be no multiplier loads on those individuals. They would be getting paid directly by the federal government, and the project organizations would not have those parts of the administrative costs. On the other hand, the project organizations would be paid for their expenses incurred in running the projects involved, in implementing the projects involved. Now, how much of these expenses would be covered by the federal job guarantee program would depend on the negotiations with the nonprofit organizations and the SEVs, okay, and the workers' co-ops. The government, the job guarantee program, might in some cases be looking for cost sharing. In many cases, they might be looking for 15% cost sharing with the private organization. I'm sorry, with the non-governmental organization, the NGO or the nonprofit. Okay. But the exact amount of the cost sharing would have to be actually negotiated in the process of approving the projects. However, you should be clear again that the actual money for the participants would go directly to the participants with no middle agent involved. Now, that's an important feature, I think. Now, there would be three categories of jobs defined by the kind of care they would give to the community in line with the public purpose. So this defines some other objectives of the Job Guarantee Program. It would be defined in terms of jobs that are about caring for the environment, jobs that are about caring for the community, and jobs that are about caring for people. Caring for people. So those are the three categories of jobs that these projects would be designing, that the project organizations would be designing in the projects they were trying to get the local community and the various levels of government to approve. Where would the people be cited at first when they're looking to be connected with these jobs? Well, the center for finding jobs and for looking for jobs and for participating in generating jobs would be in the unemployment offices of the United States, which would now become no longer unemployment offices, but rather transitional job centers. Now, the same offices would continue to deal with unemployment for those who didn't want to go into the Job Guarantee Program and who wanted to take advantage of unemployment benefits. Those same offices would do that. But their major function would become serving as community job banks. Each locality would have a community job bank, and that community job bank would be in touch with a national repository of community level jobs that were on offer by these projects that had been approved in the program. So, the community job centers, then, would be places where people would go to become connected with the jobs. They would also be training centers to some degree for people who wanted certain jobs but wouldn't be able to fit into those particular jobs. They would also be centers that actually arranged for the wages to get to the job guarantee participants. They could also be much more, as I'll talk about as I go through some more of what I have for you today. But before I do that, I wanted to emphasize that the program would work counter-cyclically. Okay. Again, it would be bigger in times when jobs were needed, because its function is to guarantee full employment, okay, at all times. The program activities would be smaller when there are fewer people who need these job guarantee jobs because they would have good jobs in the private sector that they presumably preferred. So going on with some of the features of the social enterprises. Some social enterprises would totally prohibit any distribution of profits. So in working for them, there would be salaries and wages, but there wouldn't be any distribution of profits. But in other social enterprises, they do allow distribution of profits to a limited extent. In other words, maybe 10% of the profits would be distributed and the rest would be reinvested in the cooperative, let's say, or the a social entrepreneurial venture, or the nonprofit organization. Well, of course, it was a nonprofit organization; it would not have profits, but so that's the point there. So, in this sector, in the JG sector, the profit motive would be very limited compared to the private sector. In the job guarantee sector would provide the funds to scale up the amount of labor in the job guarantee program to create a true systemic change in the system we have now. What kind of work would be involved? Things like home care, community clinics, urban fisheries, veteran services, aquaponics, the mentoring of youth, sustainable agricultural work, opportunities to intern at various jobs, training for new schools, and renovation, and also jobs in beautifying local areas. There would also be the arts. Jobs in the arts would be supported by the JG program. New categories of work that I've not mentioned would be coming into view all the time. Why would we expect that? Well, in the market sector, there are new jobs that are being created all the time. Why wouldn't there be new jobs getting created all the time by the nonprofit organizations and the SEVs, and the local governments designing new job guarantee projects? The answer is there would be. With changes in technology, there would be new jobs coming into view all the time. That, of course, would be very important. What's important to keep in mind is that the nonprofit and social enterprise sector we're talking about, that the organizations in them are engines for creating new jobs that would be delivering social value according to the public purpose on a continuing basis. Just as we cannot anticipate jobs created by the private sector, so we also cannot anticipate new jobs in nonprofit and social enterprise sector jobs. Now, all that said, there are long lists of possible job guarantee jobs that are available in Pavlina's papers, in Fidel Kaboob's papers, in the papers of many people who have written about the job guarantee. I mean, you'll find lists of 40 jobs in those papers, 50 types of jobs in those papers. there's really no problem when it comes to thinking, okay, of jobs. So let's get into the inner life of an MMT based job guarantee program. I've already spoken about organizations that would be generating proposals for local governments. As I said, RFQs would go out soliciting proposals, and the social entrepreneurial ventures and nonprofit organizations and local governments would respond to the proposals. How do we know? Because they always respond to governmental proposals. They always want to do work of this kind, even cost sharing work, okay, of this kind. So they're certainly going to happily respond to proposals of this kind. It's one of their reasons for being. So those are going to go out. And so now, how are the projects, how are the proposals going to be evaluated and approved? Well, in each community, I see something like, and these are my ideas, a core team of 5 members. I don't think it would take more than 5 in most local communities. Now, in big cities, of course, you have lots of local communities. So you might need a lot of core teams of 5 members. Okay. If you're in a municipality like New York City, okay, or Los Angeles, it's essentially a conglomeration of smaller cities. There was once a book that was written about the Washington, D.C. metro area as comprised of edge cities. The metropolitan area comprised of edge cities, basically, just a whole bunch of edge cities with not very much of a core. Because a lot of the edge cities were getting just about as big as Washington, D.C. itself. So, there might be lots of core teams of 5 members to monitor and approve social value job creation projects that are implemented by I should say that are approved by these core teams. The projects might be created by the organizations that want to perform these projects. They might be created using a community of practice design where people collaborate, where people come to collaborate with a large degree of information technology support. They might be supplemented with one or more portal applications, which would supply social network analysis, survey, collaboration, document, content management tools, and facilities for people collaborating and for implementing the projects that had been designed and had been approved. There would be training to integrate people into the communities and the various teams. Because not only would there be teams to monitor and approve the social value projects, but the projects themselves would be implemented by teams. And so there would be a need for training people in the program, participants, to integrate into the teams and communities. And there would be a need for things like newsletters and white papers used to publicize the activities going on within the communities and in the various projects. in order to publicize the activities and facilitate the integration of job guarantee people into the projects. The projects I'm talking about would be approved by a core team only with a plan and a specific case specifying impacts expected from the interventions that being carried out by the projects, and there would be various kinds of measures that would be used to evaluate whether expected impact had occurred. They would bear a family resemblance to the balanced scorecard methods that are used in the private sector, but of course, the outcome emphasis would be far different because these would be nonprofit activities, generally speaking. And in any case, they wouldn't be projects and organizations that would be aiming at profits. They would be aiming at outcomes that were in accord with the public purpose. I'm going to refresh my screen again because I see that I seem to be frozen here, and I know, in fact, that in reality, I doubt that I am frozen. Okay, let's see. Here I am. Okay. So I see I've missed a lot of comments. I will catch up later to the comments. Uh, so there would be evaluations of whether the expected impact of each of the projects had occurred. Each project would also have a knowledge broker in it. The function of the knowledge broker would be to moderate the collaboration threads, to coordinate with the community core team, and to coordinate also with the project teams. So everybody knows what's going on, what progress is actually being made, where the projects are going off track, and so that the community of practice could be used to adjust, to collectively participate in deciding how to adjust and how to make the project a success. So all of this is envisioned as very bottom up, with the participants always having a say and always participating in the solutions that would be worked out to complete the projects successfully. So visualize it. Each new participant registers for the job guarantee at the former unemployment office, which now becomes the job guarantee office. The registrants in the job guarantee program earn pay from the first hour they register. The Job Guarantee Office provides training about the structure of the Job Guarantee Program to the registrant and provides them access to the employment portal of job guarantee openings in their local area and across the United States. So if they can't find a job they like in the local area, they'd be able to find work in another local area in the job guarantee program. Thus, They would know that a job was waiting for them as soon as they got to another local area. They could sign on to the job opening and know that they would have a job waiting for them if they wished to leave one local area and go to another local area. So the program would be creating mobility within the United States too. Of course, this would not be so good for Flint, Michigan, if people knew they could go somewhere else. Of course, on the other hand, it might be very good for Flint, Michigan, because maybe they would quickly find a way to solve the water crisis if they knew everybody was going to leave to go elsewhere. But anyway, that's another issue. Yeah. Another question. Okay. The JG office, in other words, in the new job centers, that we're talking about, the former unemployment offices, would provide community rooms where people can talk to others, where they can learn about how job guarantee processes work, and where they can develop social relationships with other people in the job guarantee program. So important. Get integrated into the community. Computers would be issued to participants who need them, a gift from the JG program, along with the training necessary to use the computers. Okay, and anybody who objects to that, I mean, come on. If you're spending $31,200 a year, I think it should be actually a lot more. Let's say if you're spending $37,000 per year on a job guarantee participant, you'd want to spend another $500 in order to ensure that they would be able to participate in the program you are inducting them into, wouldn't you? It would be stupid not to do that. So the registrants can join a project and they can take a position that they think they fit. Now here's an important wrinkle in my conception of it anyway. If nothing fits them, then they can get training from the program to learn the skills they need to fill a position that they want but that they don't yet fit. If in the event they find nothing they want to do, or if they just prefer, they can join with others to create an entirely new social enterprise embodied in a new project. In other words, they themselves could form an organization to start a new project if they could think of one that would fulfill a public purpose not being fulfilled in their local community. They can organize, in other words, a workers' cooperative. Doesn't cost that much to incorporate in many states in the United States. Once you've incorporated, then you can pass the bylaws necessary to make the organization a workers' cooperative. And then you can put in a proposal. And by the way, all this time, you're getting paid by the Job Guarantee Program. While you're getting paid, you can put in a proposal to the local community to get a project approved. It could work in that way. They can define, in other words, their own organization with others and their own projects if they don't find anything that they really like to do. So this would not be at all like a work fair situation. They wouldn't have to take what's in the job bank. They wouldn't have to try to get training to fit into something that's already in the community job banks. If they've looked across the country, they don't find anything that excites them or that they like. They can create something of their own. That's part of the reason why they'd be building the social relationships in their local area among participants in the job guarantee program. So again, visualize it. They can develop and submit a proposal for their project to the community core team for evaluation. If the project and its budget are approved, then the community core team submits it to the local government for final approval. Yes, because the local government would have to have a say in it. They would not necessarily control it. I'm not sure. I haven't really decided on the final details of that yet. I really visualize a board, including local government officials and other stakeholders, giving final approval to projects. And most of the time, since the projects were developed and were evaluated in the first instance by the core team, I envision that most of the time this board of local stakeholders would have most of their work already done for them, and that most of the projects would have a very good chance of sailing through by the time it got up to the level of the final approval. If the project is approved, then the federal government provides the funding for the project, except for wages, which again are paid directly to the JG participants in the project. The projects are carried out under the supervision of the person who's elected by the JG participants to head up the projects. Now that would be in organizations and with projects that were actually created by the JG participants themselves. Now, if they were getting integrated into ongoing projects, then the leaders would already have been elected by their own organizations or selected by their own organizations if the organizations happen to be conventional nonprofits, which generally speaking are not conventionally run, or the kinds of social enterprise ventures which are conventionally run. So in case they want to get into an organization like that, then they would have to accept what had happened before. But in the case where they want to go into a workers' cooperative type of organization, then they would, of course, be continually deciding among themselves who would fill the various roles and the projects of the organization. In this way, all JG participants will be integrated into the program within a certain period of time, or they can voluntarily leave it at any time and either accept a job in another sector or look for other benefits from the government. So, winding this up now, other than our usual question period. So, I see the job guarantee as being organized in a way that will integrate those who want to work at a living wage with a new honorable job that actually delivers social value to their community, while also providing them with a social world full of opportunities to interact with many other people. They'll be able to choose a job that fits them, to get training for one or two in collaboration with others, create a job they like and find to be a meaningful job. where they can learn new skills and accomplish things they can be proud of. They can get socialized into working with information technology tools that better fit them to work in teams and to qualify for private sector work if they want to leave the social value world and return to the market value world. While in the social value sector, however, they can and will produce outcomes that contribute to their community while keeping things together for themselves and their family. So, altogether, I think this would be a very happy outcome for themselves and their communities. So, that was my main statement. I did not try to focus on where the funding would come from in the macroeconomic sense. I assume that most of the people who are here tonight and who are likely to see this video already have been integrated in the basic ideas, okay, of MMT, and know therefore that when Congress appropriates the funds for this program, the funds will become available in the Treasury spending account one way or the other and will be forthcoming from the federal government to spend what has been mandated by the Congress. So, let me see if there are any questions that I can answer now. So, let me see if there are any questions that I can answer now. People are saying they have to read Cory Booker's bill, I guess. Okay, and Ilhan Omar's bill, if she's got one. Uh, yeah, I know that Cory Booker's bill is uh, actually basically a pilot program bill involving 15 communities, and I don't even know if it's at a living wage, Susan. I don't think, okay, it's at a living wage. I don't think $15 an hour is a living wage even in Newark. Well, Dale says 30K won't cut it in northern New Jersey and New York City. Yeah, that's right. Dale says Cory's pretty much a snake in the grass in my view, and mine too. He's so neoliberal, it's disgusting. And Dale says, I'm wondering about old age pensioners like me. Some extra income surely wouldn't go amiss. Well, I'm sure that it would be possible for old age pensioners to seek jobs in the job guarantee program. In other words, your Social Security is only affected by what else you earn in the sense that your income tax goes higher. But you can receive Social Security and still work, which means you could go into the job guarantee program if you wanted to and do something worthwhile for 30 odd $1,000 a year, and find that that is some help to you financially. That certainly might be true. Susan points out H.R. 4278 is the number of Ilhan's FJG bill. And she says only 15 communities will have it. Not everyone will be able to participate. Cory Booker messes us up. Sad. So, Susan, okay, is it the case that what Ilmar that Ilhan Omar has done is to introduce Cory Booker's bill into the House? Is that what's happened? Susan says, the Senate FJG bill is 2457. That's Cory Booker's bill. So it's probably similar to the House resolution, a pilot program. So maybe Ilhan was simply introducing Cory Booker's bill into the House, basically. The number would be different, of course, then. Susan says, I wonder if Bernie will come out with his own FJG bill. He was supposed to. He put it off. He's got it in his Green New Deal program. But I don't think he's introduced the formal bill yet into the Senate. I'm not sure why not. Sam says, I've been saying for a year or two, if a business owner can't pay a living wage and respectable compensation, they don't deserve to be in business. I completely agree, Sam. I've been saying that for years, too. Russ says, I appreciate Pavlina saying that the FJG is not a panacea to fix everything. I appreciate that, too. It's not a panacea, but it would fix a whole damn lot of things. Of course, in itself, it's not a Medicare for all bill. That's true. Greg says we can also rebuild our water infrastructure every 10 years as well. Cora says unemployment offices used to have resources for finding a job, but they were not very helpful. A job guarantee would work perfectly for finding a job, I think. I do too. I think it would be great. It would be especially great for young people who are having trouble finding a job. Greg says, I know a lot of cities here in Georgia which could be renovated and have city streets rebuilt. Yes, and we need that. And the local communities need that. They need that to attract people. They need that to get their economies going. The job guarantee program could be a big help to them in waking up the economies of rural areas. That and the Green New Deal together could wake up the economies of rural areas all across America and make America as a whole a prosperous place again. Unfortunately, some people think a JG would only create shovel-ready jobs. Well, maybe. It depends on how you define the JG. The way I defined it here, it would do a lot more than that. And my daughter Devorah says, Cora, that seems to be true of the Veterans Job Program in California. Too many of those jobs are only great if you didn't get wounded or physically spent doing other physical jobs. Yeah, but of course, so the JG program would have, I think, would be developing IT jobs, performing various services that could be filled by disabled people. Fern Henley's joined. Hi, Fern. Hi, Karen Reese. And Dolores Pierce. Sam and Greg are back. And Susan says, yes, I think so. And Devorah has rejoined again. So, I think I have all the comments now. I don't see Lana here. I wanted to ask her. It was Lana who was actually the inspiration for this live stream. She told me that at the MMT conference, the workshop, the democracy workshop, seemed a little bit unclear about how the job guarantee would work from the bottom up, and how workers' cooperatives could be integrated into it. So some of the things that I wanted to do in this presentation were to define how workers' cooperatives could easily get involved in the job guarantee program, and how they could play a very valuable role as some of the nonprofits, okay, and SEVs that were part of the program, and how the program could be used as a seedbed for starting workers' cooperatives. So I wanted to make that clear in concept anyway, and I wanted to get a little bit at least into the details of how these job centers might work to create communities of people fulfilling jobs, filling jobs, thinking about jobs, creating new jobs. And there's Rob Rivera. What's going on with you, Rob? I haven't seen you for ages and ages. You've been missing a lot of exciting live streams, I think. Anyway, here we are. Any other questions or comments you'd like me to entertain for tonight? There's Rob Rivera. What's going on with you, Rob? I haven't seen you for ages. I'll give you some time to think of those. And to record any additional comments that you have while I'm waiting. I'll remind you to please share, like, and subscribe, and especially at the YouTube video, which will shortly follow this. And please become a patron at www.patreon.com/Joe_Firestone. So I'm back. Now let's see what you've got over here. Lana said she was on her own watch party. Well, did I answer the questions you had? Or did you have some others you'd like to put to me now, Lana? Greg says the FJG would do a world of good for my rural area here across South Georgia. Oh, you bet. And a lot of communities across the South Georgia. Thank you, Lana. Did I leave you with any questions, though? I would like to tie this up in a nice bow for you before we end. Thank you, Lana. Did I leave you with any questions? I would like to tie this up in a nice bow. Greg says the FJG could also be used in creating hemp or processing plants and create new jobs across South Georgia as well. Yes, if the local communities approve the project, it certainly could. And it could create those plants as workers' cooperatives as well. Lana says we may have more follow-up questions to follow. That's true. There may be more follow-up questions, and I'll watch for them, and I'll answer them as best I can. So any more comments? So Sandra Amy has joined. Hi, Sandra. Says we may have more follow-up questions to follow. Any other questions or comments? Greg says, hemp processing plants would really make small Georgia communities grow their local economies. Yeah, and the hemp processing plants, not so much the processing plants, but growing the hemp, the crops each year, three harvests, continuous growing. That stuff is great for carbon sequestration. Oh, Sandy Shellis was on too. Well, good for Sandy. How was her stream? Sandy's really a great streamer. Sandra Amy says, we need to grow 2 acres here. Greg says, hemp itself would trigger an economic boom in many small southern communities. It'd probably trigger an economic boom all over the South. Oh, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't realize that you changed. Okay, your FB page. I mean, I see your image here, but oh, now I see. Now I see what happened. Oh, oh, amazing. So that's why the name Sandra Amy sounded strange to us. We have 6 acres, and up front we let it grow out to prairie this year. I told my husband that we should grow hemp and sell it because the local farmers are starting to do that, okay, in New York State. Yes, I see that now, Sandy. I see that now. Sandra Amy is Sandy Shellis. The same person. New Facebook identity.
Not anymore.
I copied my daughter just using my real first two names. Laugh out loud. Yeah, that may be a very good idea, Sandy. She says, I'm incognito. Yeah, as long as someone doesn't doesn't click on your image and see that it's you, you're incognito. Okay, any other questions, comments? Greg says, with the Amazon burning at alarming rates, growing hemp would be so beneficial to carbon sequestration. Absolutely, Greg. I mean, we have to do everything we can possibly do here to sequester the carbon. And hemp is evidently a very, very good substitute for the Amazon rainforest if we play our cards right. Sandy Amy says, I finally will be doing a live on Monday on Facebook. Alex Londos, I've been in a world of back pain. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear it, Sandy. So sorry to hear it. It's very nice to see you too. Sandy says, thanks for inviting me, Greg. Oh boy, I hope there's something they can do for your back pain, Sandy, or something that can be done about your back pain. I know it's been a problem for you for a very long time. Then the world is back to Okay, if there are no other comments or questions, I've been here now for about an hour and 45 minutes, so I think I'm going to call it a night. Oh, yeah, surgery is. Yeah, there's got to be a better way than surgery. That's really bad. So I'm going to call it a night. I'll be back on Monday, most probably around 9 o'clock or so. And I'll see you then. And I will look for your follow up comments. And also look for my link. I'll edit the description. And I'll give the link to Pavlena's really excellent paper that I've been reading now every once in a while since it came out. It's really the definitive piece on the job guarantee thus far, I think. I added a little to it, of course. Had to do that. Sandy says I'll have to go back and review. Next time I'll make it earlier. Thanks, Sandy. I'm on at 8 Eastern Standard Time. Cool. I'll join you after mine. But thank you, Sandy. I'd say I'd join you, okay, at 8, but I'm often in the middle of actually preparing, okay, at 8. Oh, she's in New York. Yeah, she's in the southern tier, New York State. I'll make every effort to join you. I'll make every effort to join you. Just sending an offline note to Greg. I may not be preparing. I'll try to get it all done before 8 so I can check out what's going on at your place. Sandy says, hi, Bonnie.
Hi.
So Bonnie says, hi, Sandy. Okay, thanks again, everybody, for coming. And I'll see you on Monday. He says hi.